You are listening to Investing Matters, brought to you in association with London South East. This is the show that provides informative, educational and entertaining content from the world of investing. We do not give advice, so please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Investing Matters podcast. My name is Peter Higgins, and today we have the privilege of speaking with the hugely talented George O'Connor, who is now a IT analyst at Goodbody. He's got over 25 years experience of working in the industry as a analyst. Fantastic analyst. I've been following him for years, made a fortune from George's ideas and analysis. So here's why I've got George on the show today. George, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey there, Peter. Delighted to be here. And of course, big shout out to everyone at Investing Matters and your community. I'm a big fan and a supporter.
Thank you ever so much, George. Now, I've got to start really with, you've done your studies, double honours, may I add, in BA European Studies at the University of Cork, yeah? And then you did interpretation of financial statements, which I think everyone needs to go and do because it just keeps changing so frequently how we should analyze and look at financial statements, and we're still scratching our heads going, I'm not quite sure what this is all about. And then you've got the investment management certificate, IIMR, but you started your journey really at IDC as an IT analyst, and then you spent, I'm going to go through some names here now, Granville Davis, Albert He Sharp, All Mutual Securities, Shore Capital, I think was where I probably first started looking at your work. Panmure Gordon, of course, and then Stephen Nicholas, and now you're going to start a new role at Goodbody. I want to ask you, George, with regards to that journey starting at IDC, your learning, your journey, what you took the most out of those 25 years of an analyst. You've seen so much come and go. So what's been your greatest learning, mate?
Thank you, Peter, for reminding me that I've worked in lots of places. So essentially, if I back off, I'm a one-trick pony. I'm an IT analyst. So I started out with IDC, as you said, and there my job was to work with buyers of technology, suppliers of technology, government, IT asset managers, and really put forward to them or answer the question for them, what's the economic impact of IT futures? And that was really exciting. And because of my inability to say no, similarly here, I found myself doing a lot of high profile stuff in terms of the UK tech community. There was one particular instance. I was on a podium with Bill Gates. Peter, for your younger investor community, to think of Bill as a sort of as a version 1.0 Elon Musk. So I'm there on a podium. Where is Bill? Suddenly the screen comes down and a voice says, "Sorry, I can't be with you today." I was so lucky that the audience did not have a load of rotten tomatoes because I was first in line. Anyway, so that was fun. Shortly afterwards, I joined the capital markets land with Granville Davies. I don't know if you can remember Ruth Keach and Graham Cull there. But at the time, I mean, we're talking sort of, late 90s, tech was a subsector of the support services sector. And what investors really wanted was, how do the bits and pieces, so how do the gears work in terms of the tech industry? What goes where? What should I be looking at? And, can you find me from the UK, some of the glamour that we're seeing on the NASDAQ side. After that, we had .com. Most of .com was about being headhunted and starting my own .com. Both of these experiences are very short-lived. Long hangover. And then in fairness, I joined Panmure Gordon, and that was with, I don't know if you remember, because Tim's still around, Tim Lineker, huge hat tip to Tim. Philip Whale, Patrick Johnson, Tom Nicholson, Giles Leather, super individuals. And we just started a purple patch in terms of tech IPOs. And that was really exciting to take, brand new companies into investors and learning all the time about startups and scale ups. What does good look like, and what are the success factors? And so we started out with eShare. We went on to do One Disco. We did Eagle Eye. We did Focusrite, and many others. That was a wonderful time. With Stiefel, I thought we could scale that up. Unfortunately, they've gone a different direction. So now, yes, I'm with Goodbody. Really excited by the opportunity here. Sort of Goodbody is just very quickly founded in 1876. So that long-term thing is critical for me. In addition, the investors span the UK, US, and Europe, and that's very important. But the icing on the cake is that AIB acquired them October last. So now there's a massive balance sheet in there as well to create that rounded offer spanning capital markets, corporate finance, asset management, and of course, from that balance sheet, the ability to do new things and scale. So very excited. However, I've got to put a caveat on that. It's like day 3. I've only just discovered where the loos are. You know, George doesn't know enough yet.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, you mentioned, obviously, it's got purchased. They previously owned it, didn't they? Allied Irish Bank. And they are the so-called one of the big 4 commercial banks in Ireland. So you're in a massive company there, George. You know, and you've already got, as a stockbroker, 138-ish million with what they were purchased for, and more than 8 billion on their assets, and 300 people already. So you're joining a big team, mate. Again, so. You know, you've mentioned headhunting. You've been headhunted all the time. That's why you've been all these places over the years.
but the other side
is always sought after, George.
But the other side, Peter, is we both know we also have the great resignation dynamics going on. In fairness, it's something I've been talking about and writing about for the last 18 months. So what you can say, Peter, is, George, it's about time you started eating your own dog food.
Well, talking about eating, you have eaten quite a few awards, George. You've won a few awards for the best IT analyst, you know, a few years running in different places. So tell me about that. What's the competition like, in the sense of you are out there amongst globally all these different analysts covering all these different stocks? What enables you to carry on being at the top of your game, and what should people be looking for when they read analyst reports?
Curiosity. I love what I do. And I'm in a privileged position, and I have a seat where I can talk to, like in the old days, when you can talk one-on-one to Bill Gates, should he decide to show up. You get this great access to companies, and you also see the new stuff early, if I can put it that way. And technology, in terms of its life cycle, it starts out by basically replicating existing processes. You know, do this a little bit better or a little bit faster. And then what you see from a pattern of usage is that people use it to do brand new things, get into adjacencies, explore new markets. You know, once upon a time, I go to Amazon to buy books, and now look at it in huge in terms of a cloud infrastructure company. So there's this constant change, this constant refresh, constant upgrades. So it's just a really exciting sector to be in. Now, it is absolutely small in terms of the UK universe, so, you know, far bigger in the US. But the team at LSE have done a massive job these past few years in encouraging new companies to start listing on LSE. So it's just such a fun, exciting time at the moment. In terms of my superpower, which I see as being curiosity, I want to get constantly deeper to the companies. If I can slightly get on a soapbox for just forgive the indulgence. What MiFID II has done is sort of generally created a sort of a more broader dumbification of sell-side research. There is less committed now to text than there has been. There's sort of a grey market in terms of ideas around companies, and I'm fundamentally opposed to that. For me, technology is about the democratization of ideas and companies and concepts, so we all improve, and as a general, a growing of awareness in terms of technology, both in the amongst the institutional world, but also in terms of the private investor world as well. Indeed, if we look at sort of NASDAQ, there you can see the increased importance of the retail investor. And we are going to start seeing that on LSE as well. And what we need to do is educate, inform as much as we can.
Really appreciate that, Candor, mate. I mean, you mentioned your superpower there, and with regards to curiosity, so I'm going to expand on that a little bit, if I may. Which emerging aspects of software and information technology do you envisage as investors we need to look forward to the most? You know, what's going to be the one that's, you know, the internet of 1990, 2020? What we're looking at in your space that investors we should keep a really big eye on?
Okie dokie. So first of all, thank you for talking to the life cycle model of technology. It's a view I absolutely support and subscribe to. And in that, we've seen waves of tech. And you'd say, well, for sort of, growth or a tech analyst, you're going to be looking to track the waves. That is absolutely the case. And I fully support that. One of the reasons why I'm so excited at the moment is that there's so much happening at the tech infrastructure level. Now, the UK has not been great historically in terms of tech infrastructure. Typically, tech in UK is really around the sort of the application of technology rather than the creation of it. However, if we back off onto our life cycle curve and look at infrastructure, we can see there in terms of cloud infrastructure. We look at it in terms of quantum computing. We look at it in terms of blockchain. We look at it in terms of security and privacy. And we also look at it in terms of 5G. In each of these areas, we can see accelerators. And these accelerators will then come to fruition in terms of new use cases and absolutely new startups and new companies. And for me, you can criticize me, Peter, and say, George, do you know what? I've heard about all of these before. And I'm going to say, absolutely, you've heard about all of these before. But the whole sort of time is right. We've wasted 2 and a bit years in terms of COVID and pandemic and lockdown. But if we look at the pattern of usage that really accelerated from COVID. So, for example, work from home. So we can do this, have this conversation pretty much anywhere. And those forces are now being unleashed. So you had the eminent and the hugely impressive Reg Hoare on last week. And in the old days, you would have had to go around to Reg's hallowed offices. And now you can speak to Reg on the end of a connection. And he's possibly golfing in Andalusia, or he's sitting in his swim shorts beside his swimming pool. And that is just a wonderful world that we are living in. We can work longer, harder, but be more productive and do it so much more on our terms. It's a magical world where we are embarking into. Absolutely, your timing today is horrific. NASDAQ is down 30% year to date. In terms of our own UK market, software and tech services down 29%. FTSE 100's all over the place, but down 3%. But this is a great time to have a reset. Tech valuations came off the boil last October, so we're used to it. We know exactly what we're doing in terms of valuations, and stuff that was expensive is now so much cheaper. And we also know why is it cheaper. So yeah, huge opportunities abound.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting point you make there regarding the almost a hype cycle regarding what goes on regarding certain trends in technology and other industries as well. And we've got so much going on regarding the technology space, and we've seen so much going on in one particular space in particular, in a sense of how much sheer vast amounts of money is being pushed at it, and that's the metaverse space. George, lots of people talking about it, not sure quite where it's going to go. We've seen something called the Metaverse Standards Forum just been set up recently with 37 technology companies involved: Google, Meta, Facebook, Nvidia, Epic Games, Roblox, Snapchat, etc., building products around the metaverse. Now, that is something, I was talking on another podcast recently about David Bowie saying this is what the internet's going to be like in he was talking in 1999, and they all said he was talking absolute nonsense. And I think the same conversations happening in certain spaces now where people say, oh, metaverse, and people look at other people and go, that person's talking nonsense. Where are you at? Where is your thoughts as a technology analyst regarding the metaverse, George?
Great stuff, and hat tip for flagging the hype cycle, because as you know, that was a Gartner Group invention, and if anyone kicked our asses at IDC in the 90s, it was Gartner Group. So well done you for opening a wound, Peter, that I thought had scabbed over.
Hurry up, George, come on.
So honestly, we must always be wary of baubles. The tech industry absolutely adores worshipping false idols. However, we do have to back off and think, well, what is the use case in here? And if I go back to my curiosity, well, one of the areas where my curiosity goes is, what is the demand side equation? Is this solving a problem that anyone really wants to solve? Well, what are the underlying end market dynamics looking like? So what you can do is look at the metaverse and say, well, that's a collection of bits and pieces that is really looking for a home, and worse, is looking for a marketecture, i.e. marketing architecture rather than technology architecture to call a home. I would encourage you to sort of sit down with Shiranga at Balderton. The VC community is actively investing in this, and this for me would be the smart end of the VC community. Our conversation is so one-dimensional right now. Screen technologies, one of the things I was involved with back in the 90s was the whole tilt swivel industry, and that's where now PCs do this. Prior to that, it didn't. There were boxes. In fact, there were three boxes: the screen box, the processing box, the keyboard box, and then once upon a time there were even just one big box. And now, sort of, that drove the whole development of ergonomics with the metaverse. For me, as we overlay stuff like let's say augmented reality, this whole sort of work from home thing, shopping from home, returns being such a huge thing, not just for consumers but also for the industry as well. Imagine this creating this experience whereby the suit. Well, sadly, I don't really wear suits anymore. I've got to upgrade my wardrobe. We both know that. But where we can look at products and have this sort of relationship with them. Admittedly, this is about applied reality, not actual reality. But I really love what they're doing. Let's pick a PLC. The guys at Aviva, FTSE 100 company. We go back to Hurricane Katrina. Guys going out, only half the oil well is there. What was there? What should be there? We've got to go back to the drawings. Ding, put a call through to Aviva to get the drawings. But imagine now if you could walk through that, and that is the technology that they are developing. And they don't call it metaverse, but it is absolutely, in terms of how the engagement with technology works. So I'm from the QWERTY generation. For me, it's about tap tap tap. Well, admittedly, tap tap tap. And for my children, it's got nothing. It's about speaking to each other. But what if it should really become about heptatics and about touching and doing that relationship there? So it's early days. Absolutely, you can poo-poo it in terms of what it's trying to do. But if you come back, you can get some really interesting use cases evolving in this. There will absolutely be false gods, but there's some really interesting thinking going on in there. And as I said, so the smart VCs are putting thought into it.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of money going into it at the moment, and other aspects of the sector. Now, there's an interesting thing we see often when we're talking about valuations regarding some of these companies. And for us as private investors, we often see news that innovative companies talk about total addressable markets, George, TAM. For the ordinary investors, George, how should we measure the potential of a company's ability to penetrate that TAM, that total addressable market? Because I talk about, oh, we've got access to this billions and billions of market, but actually you're only an innovative company with a market cap of 10 million quid. So how should we as investors try and assess their ability to penetrate that market?
Excellent point, Peter. Success is not just about having the code. It's about product market fit and then the ability to execute. And in fairness, I'd say great timing as well kicks in. So it's very difficult to do this on a part-time basis. You have to do a lot of work. You have to get away from just talking to senior management. Remember, they are coached to the nth degree. They can take you down a particular path. LinkedIn is a huge resource to enable you to get deeper into companies, because well, maybe I'm blessed with my sector, but tech is very gobby. You'll always find people talking, and that can be on LinkedIn or indeed trade shows. London is a great hub in terms of trade shows. If you're getting that one-to-one, and then from there you will also find users talking through it. So what problem is it actually solving a problem that you want to solve, and then where is the underlying potential where this can go. And then you've got other, again, just thinking online resources. You've got stuff like Glassdoor, Indeed. Now, the downside of these, that it's a bit like TripAdvisor. Spend too much time in there and you never leave your house. You come in, shut the curtains, just let's whack up our Netflix subscription and just order in from Just Eat. So there's a caution there. But what they do is they enable you to see into the companies and get a better real understanding around your critical point, which is the company's ability to execute. So, salespeople leaving left, right, center. Now, there's always attrition in sales teams. However, is it more positive than negative? The layoff.com, always a useful source. Who's hiring and who's getting rid of people, and what are the key actors in these companies saying. I'm always going to go back to getting demand side research, and that can come from industry analysts, but also talking to CIOs. For me, one of the huge changes in the industry has been from the demand side of the equation. So the CIO superhero in terms of COVID, getting through that work from home infrastructure deployed rapidly through organizations. But the other side of it that isn't really commented on is that they've also been expanding their supplier base. So, once upon a time, one of my customers was UK Gov, and the buying agency there, we just buy from IBM, anyone else just doesn't count. And that has completely changed, where you now have very entrepreneurial CIOs who are picking products from startups and scale-up organizations and really giving them a leg up. I can recall a conversation with CIO at Mercedes-Benz, Scottish government recently, and it's like, do the bill payers even know that these little startup companies are part of your supplier list? Yes. we love them. So it's a huge positive change in terms of the environment. So look there.
I think what you've said there is really, really important, George, because it's only happened in the last 10 years or so that the importance of the CIO became absolutely pivotal for certain companies. It was always used to be the case of the CFO and the CEO were the go-to people. Now there's potential for the CIO to become the next CEO. That's how important they are. So why do you think that's changed, and why do you think that's so important for people to note the importance of who is the CIO? Because that could be the actual person, male and female, who could actually push this company to further growth.
Absolutely correct. And again, if we go back to our IT model, first of all, it replicates what you've got, the status, and then you use it to do brand new things. So what you want is to have these CIOs who are looking forward in terms of enabling business change. And then you'd say, George, now you're going to start talking about digital transformation. And that's where I, Peter, put the line down and run away. So no, I'm not going to cycle into that, but they will develop and drive business change. So the actors are incredibly important. I know I talked about sort of the great resignation earlier, but if we look at our tech companies, staff are the key factor of production. If you look at R&D and say, well, what's the breakdown on R&D? It's about software engineers creating product. If we look at the operating costs of a tech company, 70% is tied to the people. So the people are absolutely critical in terms of their factor of production. So I'm always conscious, find the individuals, what are they up to?
Brilliant. Now, I want to ask you this question because we often talk about the tech pioneers and the leaders, and the names that are often mentioned are Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Sheryl Sandberg, and of course, Elon Musk. Which names do you consider that are often overlooked? And you can mention some of the CIOs out there as well if you want to, because I think we always go to the same group of cohort of people, but there's loads of innovative companies out there with CIOs and CEOs that are doing absolutely fantastic work out there in the tech industry.
So let's not do that, because lots of people can go down that route. Let's come back one step and say, who were the people who were driving growth in tech companies? And there I would point you to the and here let's just look at the UK rather than looking globally. So here let's look at somebody like John O'Connor from the Scale Up Group. So John's a PLC guy, sold out. Now here's live. Him and his cronies are developing the next generation of tech companies by providing not just cash, because you can get cash in lots of different places, but by the smarts in terms of this is the process, this is the model in terms of how you scale up. That's a name. Let's look at Stephen Kelly. So Stephen Kelly is unique, being the only PLC guy who was in 2 FTSE 100s. His day job now is running Tech UK. And what are they doing? It's a big industry group, and they are growing and developing the UK tech companies through a range of services. Really, though, on the advisory side, this is how to do it. This goes to your point. How do I understand ability to execute? These are people sort of been there, done that kind of an idea. You've got Dr. Steve Garnett, formerly chairman at Salesforce, now investing in companies, but it's not just the cash, it's the skills and the awareness, and this is how to do it. You've got, I mentioned the exchange earlier. They have, you'll know the Future 50 program, but they've got a whole series of programs in there. You've got Marcus, you've got Neil Shah, you've got a whole group, Claire, in there, who are going up, developing companies, showing them this is how to scale, this is where to go when you need da 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 da. And then let's park all of that, and let's say at the seed, at the startup, you've got the likes of Chris Lowe in the not which world, who is also in there developing and growing those small companies. And if you go into sort of to the tech industry, you find lots of engineers who are themselves then also investing in startup companies. So we all bemoan the loss of ARM. I mean, it was horrific that it happened, and now it might go to NASDAQ, not stay here, or dual list. But one of the sort of the unintended consequences is that lots of engineers came out of there, clever people who have money and understand the scaling up of a company, who can now go in and go for startups. So it's very easy to say, oh, let's just find the next Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, but it's the sort of the true heroes are the guys and gals who are in there developing their own companies and creating the next generation of global champions. And I will say they are supported, by the likes of scale-up organizations and Stephen Kelly, but they're also supported by those highly entrepreneurial CIOs who, on the demand side of the equation, saying, yes, let's go for that. We think this is a solution. Absolutely, it's not IBM, but this addresses a business need for us. And then let's come back again and say, we have been blessed in terms of the UK with a group of highly entrepreneurial investment managers. So Reg Hoare was talking. He mentioned the team at Herald, superb team in there. But you've also got, Guy Feld over in Canaccord Genuity, the Hargreave Hale team. Again, similar thing there. Octopus, the team with Kate Tidbury, hugely entrepreneurial, supporting startup and scale-up companies. You've got there's a list there. We look broader. You've got the likes of Randy Barron from Pinnacle Associates in America. Global investor. Traveling into the UK, using his shoe leather. So it's that supportive environment that we have now that we never had at all back in the 80s, 90s. early noughties. We now have this supportive ecosystem of other people, which is why the UK is in such an exciting spot right now. It's easy for us all to get carried away in terms of fintech. You know, we have the companies, we have consumers in terms of both of us who are early adopters of fun ways of banking and financial services. And of course, you've got all the capital here as well, given that London is there. But it's not just a fintech thing. This goes far wider and deeper than that.
I love that response. And I'm glad you mentioned Stephen Kelly, because he's one of those that got me interested in the two listed companies that he was with. And when he left one particular company, I won't name which one, I was like, uh-oh. And I think they peaked just before he left and have not recovered ever since. So that tells you a lot, I think, about somebody. Now, I want to change something up a little bit now. I want to talk about your investing now, George, if I may. Your own ISA SIP, if you have it, and your investing style. Could you tell us about that? And the diversification, if you do have it.
Yeah. So sadly, I am the growth guy. So I am incredibly unfashionable and out of favor at the moment. I do a lot of work in terms of underlying the underlying demand side of the equation. So that is critical for me. As I said, it's really difficult to do this on a part-time basis. I tend to go smaller rather than larger because I'm looking for growth compounders. At the same time, because it is tech, and both of us know you've got a life cycle model, your timing can be perfect, but also can be a nightmare. I like to remind everyone of a little startup called Sage. And I also remind everyone of a little IPO called CAD Center. CAD Center became Aviva. Those were 33 million market cap IPOs that struggled to get away in my old shop, Albert E. Shaw. And they are now the two FTSE 100 constituents. So hold on to your winners for the long term. There will absolutely be bumps. And I think Reg and you had a great conversation in terms of when markets come off, you know, what happens then, and should you be averaging down and using that as a tactical thing. But for me, I love profit warnings because they flush out the momentum money. And as long as you know why did that company warn, what went wrong, and you're still convinced the underlying proposition remains just as strong, you can get some great bargains in there. So long-term preference for small rather than large.
I want to touch on, you said something really, really different to anyone I've ever spoken to there, George. You said you love profit warnings. Now, most people, a profit warning comes and they love the company for the past year and a half or whatever. Love, profit warning. I'm out, I'm gone. You just said, I love profit warnings. Please expand on that for me, because I think that's brilliant what you just said.
Okay. Well, let's remember our Buffett. Buy when others are fearful. And that for me is the king. You know these tech companies, they're all illiquid. You can't buy the stuff when it's going up. And then you can buy shed loads of it on the way down. The important thing though is to know the company from that deep perspective of product market fit. What are the end users saying, and what are the internal dynamics? The whole sort of Glassdoor indeed. Put those together, and then you can absolutely love profit warnings because you can build holdings at far better prices. Momentum will come and go, and again, remember Sage, 33 million market cap, boom, how many billions today. So yes, I'm a believer in it. Clearly, what you don't want to do is encourage companies to have profit warnings. You want. But once you have a group of companies that you are pretty much sure you know exactly what they're doing, then the opportunity that comes along where you can pick them up and get great timing is a wonderful thing.
Brilliant. Love that. Now, very important part of what you've just said there is the value side of it. Now, one of the difficulties that private investors have is valuing these ordinary or tech companies. What, in your view, is a simplified way that us as private investors could go about attempting to value these companies?
So cash is absolutely critical, and coming up with their ability to generate cash, FCF yield, is absolutely critical. in terms, you're going to say, George, in terms of momentum companies and early stage, and particularly my area, which is the risky side of early stage, they probably don't have cash. And they're at the consumptive side of cash. You can say, George, park that one. So then you go back to growth. And what you do there is you find the underlying characteristics and dynamics of growth. So it has to be growing growth. And what you find there as you break down numbers and sort of build up a spreadsheet, is that you will see that there's a shortage of growth. So there's a premium put on growth, but also faster growth gives better end valuations. And in our sort of IPO days, you can float growth. You can absolutely do that from very small numbers, as long as investors can see the underlying traction and customers are saying great things, and you can see an underlying pipeline coming through there. But absolutely, in the first instance, understand the cash dynamics. Make sure the company understands the cash dynamics as well. Also, look at your co-investors in there. So will this group fund further cash calls from company ABC as well? In the old days, we tended to look at profitability. That's sort of less in favor now, simply because it can be flexed, and you'll have a whole series of adjustments that we'll go through. So that's why I tend to look at growth in fairness, just because they will use operating cash to fuel growth. So is that payback, is the ROI on growth actually delivering anything?
Okay, so with regards to the growth stocks in your portfolio, how much of your portfolio is made up primarily of growth, or is it all growth? Are you just purely, down that track of, come on, let's have it?
Peter, you're being very harsh. I think you're referring back to the hangover from the .com times, because what happened was investors looked for returns. And the key was, so they have cash and they're giving it back to me. And there were some great stories then where they could do growth and returns. And you have this whole dilemma: should they be doing returns or growth? And a lot of investors like the income stream because it shows probity. It also shows confidence in the underlying cash flows of the company. So that's a plus. For me, you can get better dividends elsewhere. You don't need to go to tech for dividends. Go elsewhere. But sadly, I am the growth guy. Splurge it on the growth. There is no shortage of opportunities, and use the cash to fuel your ability to execute on sales, and clearly come up with sort of absolutely great products as well. And I can't go away without mentioning ESG. I don't know if you can fit in anywhere, but ESG is absolutely critical. And you say, well, put a PE on ESG kind of thing. That's something we're all struggling with, but absolutely, ESG has come from the demand side of the equation. So buyers of technology are really keen on ESG. There's a company that we floated called TPX Impact. Was floated as the Panoply. Superb company. The CEO there, Neil Gandhi, from the design stage, ESG was a critical driver for him. And I confess I never really got it till I sat down with his customers who utterly stressed the importance of it. So I'm a big fan of that. And you're always trying to, how do I put the PE on ESG? But it absolutely is important. Yeah.
That's a great point there, PE on ESG. I like that phraseology. Now, I'll use that part of what you've just said there and go to the question I was going to ask a bit later on. How has technology changed the face of investing, and what lies ahead? You've already touched on the ESG aspect of it there, George.
So growth is the constant. Growth solves all problems, and the absence of growth creates and magnifies problems. To your point on Stephen Kelly leaving that company, that was about the absence of growth. So in that sense, there's that great consistency. It does not change. We still don't have enough we don't have enough listed software and tech services companies on LSE, so we need more. The investors understand. We have in London now an educated investor group who understand tech, but more importantly, they are entrepreneurial and they will invest in tech rather than just sort of look at it from afar. So that sort of widening of the sphere of interest is hugely positive. I commented earlier in terms of London, we don't have a huge number of infrastructure tech, but we have lots in terms of the application of tech. And I would imagine that we will continue to see that. Of course, everyone can say, well, fintech, because that's so sort of evident and sort of omnipresent for all of us. But we can look beyond fintech. So, for example, the pandemic was all about health tech. Well, it wasn't all about health tech, but it spawned a whole generation of health tech as the NHS, massive on the demand side of the equation, was comfortable enough to spawn this whole generation of little tech companies, and hat tip to the CIOs in there on the procurement side. So that will continue to be great. Retail tech has always been strong in the UK, simply because of the demand side of the equation has favoured it and said, yes, please, we'll go down that path. And you will see that as well. Reg tech, government tech, the whole digital transformation will also be large, spawning lots of new companies in there. I have a personal weakness in terms of robotics and what's going on there, particularly as that fuses with database. There's so much fun stuff going on in that neck of the woods. Very strong user propositions, and when we think of sort of tech inflation, much of that is around skill shortage in terms of an absence of people and bodies, and that can be addressed. That way. That said, on that. If we go back to that hangover from .com, that time did spawn the whole offshore movement, and I would like UK Gov as it goes into the world to sign relationships with other companies, to remember that it must nurture and develop the UK young STEM graduates. So my youngest, Emily. In Emily's class, everyone wants to do STEM. Previously, everyone would have wanted to do PPE. So we can see it sort of coming up there, and they need to be nurtured. There are a number of PLCs with academies. I don't know if you know FDM or Kainos or TPX, which I mentioned. The UK government needs to positively support them in terms of opening contracts for the likes of those companies who are in there at the front line, developing those this next generation of young software engineers. Let's not have all of the entry-level jobs go offshore. Let's not repeat that mistake this time. And then, of course, to build up the UK apprenticeship scheme as well, to encourage companies to hire in younger, green, raw graduate talent.
Yeah, you mentioned the growth of tech and the need for the governments and the UK to actually, manage all that growth and encourage that growth. But one of the things you touched on there also is that there's not enough tech companies listed. And when we do get some good technical companies, we don't nurture them. We don't have anything to the scale of Microsoft or Apple. The last big one we had, major big one, was ARM. And we ended up getting that, I always say, stolen, because I actually held the stock at the time. And we've never had a replacement for that. Why do we not allow our companies to grow and stay independent, George, in the UK?
In fact, it's part of how we are. It's part of our DNA. If you're on the market, if you live by the sword, then you will go buy it. So if you're on the market, you're for sale the whole time. Now, America will put in poison pills to stop that, but in the UK there is an ethos around free operating markets. And the opportunity, as I said, the opportunity from ARM is that all of those engineers who made money and thought, I don't want to work for that company. I want to now create my own company. They've been through a great learning, and they can now, create their own companies and then benefit from that ecosystem around it. The other reason, going back to the old days, was that in terms of technology, that the UK was a consumer of somebody else's technology. Going back to UK Gov, well, you buy IBM stuff, don't you? Otherwise you get fired. So we didn't create.
Indeed, that used to be the case. Indeed, yeah.
we didn't create global champions, but now we are.
I want to go backtrack a little bit. You mentioned your daughter Emily, and you've got five kids. What's the situation with their investments, and do you manage it? And where have you put some of those investments, George?
Right, okie dokie. So the five
I'm
kids are
less growth here, less risk, by the way.
So the five kids are autonomous individuals. They do their own things and learn the hard ways. But they are all young. They're at the consumption side rather than the investment side.
Right.
I probably need to stop having kids now that you mentioned five. Seems like a large number. It's flown. It's flown by.
Brilliant. Now, I've got a couple more questions, but I want to touch on the charity side, if I may. The charity Oscars for the IT industry. Tell me about that, George, please.
Okay, this was something I got involved in about 10 years ago, and it's down to my passion in terms of UK startups and scale-ups, and clearly the enterprise software sector. And you could argue it sort of started out as a drinking club, part of the worshipful company of information technologists. It has expanded from that, ably managed and driven by John O'Connor at Scale Up. Also, I don't know if you know the industry analysts at Tech Market View. Big shout out to them.
Yeah, I know about Tech Market,
great people in there. And I've been, I guess my official title is probably hanger on.
Yeah, or chief drink maker, cocktail maker. I hear that you're one of the judges, though. That's what I heard.
Yes, I am. I keep that one under a bushel. Yes, I am for the last 10 years. It's a privilege to be involved in it, and all it does is basically feed my imposter syndrome time after time. When you're sitting in there surrounded by some huge industry stalwarts who really know what they're talking about.
Brilliant. Now I've got a final question. I always throw something a bit oddball when I ask this question, and I'm gonna quote Bill Gates, who you've mentioned earlier. Bill Gates famously said, "We are changing the world with technology." George, if you were given all the resources required to meet your goal, how would you change the world for you, your family, and humanity?
Oh wow, Peter, I can't answer that. I'm a sell-side analyst. My one track. So we need. So first off, we need peace in this world. We also need to see greater humanity, and we need to see greater kindness. And that's from all of us, from everyone. I'm convinced a lot of this can happen from the profit motivation. And I don't know if you've followed any of the writings around profit with purpose, but that is a very strong movement where investors are brought along. And absolutely, it sidles into ESG, which I guess was where you were going with this as well. But technology can improve our world, not just our world, but the future. As well. So we need peace, we need kindness, we need better in terms of ESG, and technology can be an enabler on each of these, I firmly believe.
Brilliant. George, that was my last question. I'm not sure if you want to add anything, but that was absolutely superbly answered. Given how much spin I put on there, you still battered it back fantastically.
Peter, many thanks for this opportunity and operation. I referred to myself a little bit as a sort of a one-track pony, one-trick pony. Earlier, gave you some illustrations, so maybe you think, George, you're really just a little bit of a show pony, and hopefully we've had some horse sense shared between the two of us. Sort of for me, in terms of final thoughts, I'm reminded of that pony who went into the doctor with a sore throat. And the doctor said, don't worry, you're just a little horse. And in fairness, that is my predicament. That's my predicament as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely fantastic. You are not just a one-trick pony, mate. You've been at it for 25 years, and to be at this level, at this standard consistently, shows how talented you are, my friend. So thank you ever so much. That was George O'Connor, IT analyst at Goodbody, part now of Allied Irish Bank. George, it's been an absolute privilege. Love to the family. And I look forward to seeing you in London at some point in the not too distant future, my friend.
Thank you,
care.
Peter. Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.